All right, good evening. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join me for this yin practice this evening. I invite you to find yourself in a comfortable seat on your mat, whatever that looks like for you. And we are just going to start tonight with doing some basic neck twists, neck rolls, seated twists, and just kind of feeling into our spine as we begin to settle into this moment that we find ourselves sharing right now. So, once you found yourself in a comfortable seat, just begin to take some long, deep breaths in and out through your nose. And as we're just getting started here, go ahead and make sure that that comfortable seat you find yourself in on your mat is one that you can be in for a couple minutes. And we're just going to really drop into this space and this time and this place that we have all chosen to be together. And I'm going to make sure that my sound is actually on correctly. All right. So, once you find yourself in a comfortable seat, just begin, like I mentioned, to notice your breath and begin to notice different qualities of it. And if you have a pet joining you tonight, like I do, begin to maybe notice how they're reacting to you taking time and calming down. Oftentimes, when my dog joins me for yoga class, he will be here kind of just really interested in why I'm on the floor for a little bit. And then eventually he ends up taking a nap and snoozing on the couch. And so maybe that's true for you as well. So as you're seated here, if you haven't already closed your eyes and you feel comfortable doing so, I invite you to do so now. And as you close your eyes on your next inhale, I want you to imagine that you are seated either underneath or behind a waterfall. And imagine that this waterfall that's either cascading down over you or cascading down in front of you is just carrying your breath and carrying the weight of anything that's holding on to you through you and out of you. And so as you breathe in, imagine that you're able to breathe all the way down your spine, into your seat, and maybe into the ground or whatever is underneath you. And as you exhale, continue that imagining yourself being weighted down, but imagine that the waterfall that's cascading either over you or over and around you is taking everything that you don't need to be holding on to and washing it off of you. And so you might begin to notice that this is kind of an interesting way to breathe because typically we're breathing up and down. But right now, I want you to just sink and drop into this moment. And next, I want you to imagine that your shoulders are incredibly heavy. So, in order to really feel the weight of that, on your next in breath, I want you to inhale and bring your shoulders up to your ears, just kind of shrugging them all the way up. And on your next exhale, just drop them to the side, just shrug them to the side. And begin imagining now that the waterfall that's cascading over you is also tracing down the length of your arms. Maybe you imagine that there's little droplets just going down your arms, carrying off any stress of the day, of the week, of anything. Or maybe you want to imagine that it's cascading down your arms, just really dragging things that you don't need anymore down from your head and down each of your arms. And take a couple breaths, just imagining the weight of things either washing off of you, washing through you, and just allowing that flow to just be your breath. And on your next inhale, I invite you to just drop your right ear over towards your right shoulder. Your hands can either be next to you on your sides still, or on the ground at your sides, or maybe you want to place them on your kneecaps, either face down or face up. But just allow your right ear to drop towards your right shoulder. And see if you can feel the length of your neck along the left side from your ear down to your shoulder. And imagine that if there's any tension there, that you're able to just, with your breath, kind of scrape that off. Thinking of it as kind of scraping the batter out of a bowl. Maybe you're making cookies. You have to get that last little bit out for that last cookie. And take 3 breaths, just imagining that your breath can scrape away any stress that's held in that left shoulder, left side of your neck. And after your 3rd breath, just see if you can just drop your chin to your chest and then just look down, stretching out the back part of our neck. And taking 3 breaths here, just noticing what it feels like to trace an imaginary line from the top of your skull, across the back of your head, and down the back of your neck to your shoulders. And after you've taken 3 breaths with your chin tucked to your chest, just tilt that left, kind of begin tracing more across your chest and let your left ear fall to your left shoulder. And again, following that same imaginary, scraping the batter bowl of the stress off of your shoulders, this time on the right side. And Yin Yoga, if this is your first time practicing, can be what can feel like kind of a confusing yoga practice. All of our postures tonight will be on the ground. We will not be standing up at all during this class, and we will also be holding our postures for 3 to 5 minutes. And when you hear that, you might think that this is a restorative class where you're just here to just release and let go and relax. And a couple of those things are true. We are here to release and we are here to let go. But tonight's focus is not necessarily on relaxation, but it's on noticing where that edge of discomfort is and noticing how we can sit with discomfort in our bodies, not pain. We're not seeking to cause ourselves pain, but we are seeking to notice sensation. And where can the practice of sitting with bodily sensation and discomfort help us in our life off of the mat when we find ourselves in hard, challenging, and uncomfortable situations? How can we sit with that and learn what it has to teach us? So in your next inhale, bring your head back up to the center and look up towards the sky, towards the ceiling, towards whatever's above you. And just allow the front of your neck to stretch out. And this time, imagine as you breathe in, you're breathing in just a calm, cool, crisp breeze down your throat, into your chest. Maybe you want to extend your arms out to the sides, imagining that you are able to just stretch like a star, breathing out. And then exhale, bring your neck back to neutral, looking straight forward, either eyes open or eyes closed. And next, we're going to do a couple volcano breaths, just to imagine ourselves now kind of continuing the nature theme as a volcano that's full of lava. And that lava is the stress that you're holding onto on the inside. We all hold tension in our bodies, and sometimes that tension is related to emotional things that we're holding on to that we don't even realize we're holding on to. And so one of the practices of Yin is getting into our bodies so we can notice those things and intentionally taking control of working through that. One of my favorite authors, Brene Brown, talks about the only way out is through. And I have resisted that many times and relearned that lesson many times. And so tonight we're going to move through poses, and hopefully with that, you'll be able to move through some stress, some emotions, and just allow yourself to release and be held by your breath, these poses, and your body. So for volcano breath, we'll just bring our hands to our heart center, palms together. And with that, we'll close our eyes if that's comfortable for you, and just think about 3 things that you want to let go of, or 3 things that you want to let go of. Sometimes we aren't ready, but we know that we want to get ready. And we'll do this 3 times, and each time we'll think of letting go of one of those 3 things. And so on an inhale, we'll just rise our hands up above our head, pointing them up towards the sky. imagining that lava is going out of that volcano to the top. And as we exhale, we'll just trace our arms across, kind of forming a lava flow out with our hands to the ground, and then bringing them back to heart center. Inhaling, rising our hands up. Exhaling, letting them fall to the sides, imagining pushing that out. And then our next one is our third one. So think of the third thing, and maybe this is the thing you want to let go of, and that's okay. This is where you are today. Everything is a process. Time can do mystical things. So again, inhale, rising our hands up towards the ceiling and sky, and exhaling, opening our hands wide and tracing them down to the sides. And so wiggle your spine in any way, roll your shoulders forwards and backwards, just letting anything else just fall off of them. And we're going to move into our first pose that we'll hold for 3 minutes, and it's going to be called toes pose. And if this is your first time in Yin, it will definitely help you experience what I mean by feeling sensation. And so go ahead and shift onto your hands and knees on the mat that you're on. And if you like to have padding under you, go ahead and add a blanket underneath your knees if that's something you want tonight. And place your knees underneath your hips and your hands underneath your shoulders. And we'll just do a cat-cow here for a second to warm up our spine. So inhale, look up towards the ceiling and drop your belly. And exhale, arch your spine, looking back at your navel. And 2 more times, inhaling, looking up towards the ceiling. Exhaling, curling in. And 1 more on your own. So coming back to a neutral spine, we're just going to sit back on our toes with our toes still tucked underneath us. So our toes are curled underneath and we're sitting our seat back onto the tops of our heels. And if this feels incredibly uncomfortable and impossible for you, what I want you to do is consider taking a blanket that's rolled up potentially and placing it between your seat and your heels and sitting back on that if that's better for you. Or if you'd like to put a block there, you can do that, but that might not be as comfortable. Or if this doesn't feel at all possible for you tonight and you are wondering why you even started trying this, I encourage you to just realize that any version of the pose is the pose. The point is you came here to take this time for yourself. And so another option that sometimes we need is to just leave our hands out in front of us and just lean back towards placing our seat on our heels. There is no right or wrong way to do a yin pose. The only thing that's wrong is if you are causing pain to your body. We are not here to push ourselves past our limits or necessarily even to our limits, but we do want to begin to notice discomfort so that we can notice where our edge is. And so as you're seated back on your heels, whatever way works best for your body today, just think about noticing the entire bottom parts of your feet. So noticing what your toes feel like, maybe one by one. Noticing what the arches of your feet feel like, your heels. Noticing what it feels like to be in this position. If you work on your feet all day, your feet are literally holding you up and carrying you through the day. And so stretching out the bottom of them, I encourage you to just notice the ways in which you're moving them now in the opposite ways than you normally do. And just feel the fullness and the depth or many muscles that you feel screaming at you right now in the bottoms of your feet, and just sit with that sensation. Imagine that you're breathing all the way down into your feet and maybe tracing across the bottoms of your feet and your soles and across your toes. And we'll be here for a few minutes before we move into our next pose. So just be here, ride the wave of the sensation, and know that this is just for now, and we'll move into something else soon. And if you enjoyed those next stretches to each side, you might want to continue doing that here in this pose. Sometimes we can do two things at once so that we can stay in one of them. And if you tried one variation of this and you'd like to try a different one, go ahead and make that change. We're about halfway through. If that is easing off, I encourage you to consider staying, but if that's what you need, do that. And if it's going a little deeper, I encourage you to try that. But remember, again, we aren't here to push ourselves to or especially past our limits. And our goal is not pain. Every body is different every minute of every day. And so do what you need in this moment right now. And if that means not doing this pose, don't do this pose. We have several more to do. So on your next inhale, if your hands aren't already out in front of you, go ahead and place them out in front of you and slowly, slowly, slowly uncurl your toes, coming out of this pose even slower than we got into it. Just untuck your toes and begin to tap them on the mat, kind of changing up the blood flow, getting it back to its other state, and just patting your feet on the ground to just help with that. And so our next pose that we're going to move into is called saddle pose. And if you would like to use props for this pose, you are welcome to. If you have a yoga bolster, that could be helpful. If you have couch pillows or other things, that might be helpful. But what we're going to do is just sit down on your heels, not with your toes tucked this time, and just separate your knees so that your seat can come between your heels. And so, as you can see, I'm sitting between my feet here, and your knees are bent. If this is uncomfortable for your knees, I'm going to offer several options so that you can find what works best for you. And so what we're going to do is we're going to bring our hands behind us and walk them back so that we can either lie, if you would like to lie flat, that's perfectly fine. I'm not able to do that today, but we're going to lie back onto a prop, being mindful of our lower back that we don't injure ourselves, and just lie all the way back as much as you can if that's what you feel like you'd like to do. Or you're welcome to stay propped up on your forearms and either keep your chin tucked or allow your neck to just open up and stretch across the front. Or if you need a different option tonight, you can do this one leg at a time. I'll tell us when we're halfway through. So to do that, you'll come back to where we started and just straighten out one leg in front of you, leaving only one knee bent underneath you, and doing that same thing where you lie back. And so I'll be doing both legs, but I'll tell us when we're halfway through for those of you that would like to change. And so as you lie back, the stretch for this is along the front of our body. We just did some opening on the back of our feet, but now we're just stretching out the front side of our body on the tops of our legs and our hips, maybe even into our abdomen a little bit. And so hand placement here is wherever works best for you. You might have that on a pet, or you might want to put your arms up over your head or out to the side, either straight or in kind of a goalpost arms. But just sink in and settle in here and just be with your body in this lying down, upwards facing position. And just allow things to just rest, release, and sink into whatever is underneath you. And sometimes in this pose, if our minds are really busy, but you want to stay here, it can feel nice to use your hands to massage the bottom of your feet. Again, that idea of doing two things so that you can stay and focus on one can be really powerful, such as fidgeting with a pen while you're thinking or things like that. We're using our body and our breath to heal our minds and our hearts, which will also heal our bodies and our minds. And so if you had one leg bent and one leg straight, go ahead and carefully come up and trade that out, and then carefully go back into the restful, releasing position of your choice. And so wherever you are, just take 3 more breaths, inhaling. Maybe you want to imagine that there's a balloon in your belly that as you inhale it inflates, and as you exhale it deflates. And maybe you want that to be your favorite color, so that you can just imagine this and focus on that if it's hard to relax or you have a lot on your mind. It can feel nice to shift our mind to something else. And so after those couple breaths, go ahead and again carefully come back up to that starting position we found ourselves in. And before we move into our next pose, we're going to do a rebound pose of child's pose. So this is literally just the opposite of what we were just doing. Your knees can stay exactly where they are, and you will just fold forward and stretch your arms out in front of you, lying over your legs, and just allowing your forehead to just rest on the ground. You can bring your arms back by your sides if you prefer, but just rest here for just a moment before we move into a different pose. And maybe on this side, you imagine that the balloon is inhaling and inflating your lower back. And maybe your belly at the same time between your knees. So in your next inhale, walk your hands in towards your knees, coming back up. And our next pose is going to be a wide-legged forward fold on the ground while seated, sometimes called dragonfly pose. And so go ahead and come into a position where you can stretch your legs out to the sides at a 45-degree angle each from your body. And if you need to prop anything underneath your seat so that you can sit in a comfortable position, feel free. But what we're going to do here is just fold forward. And you might be able to fold forward where your chest is lying on the ground. I'm not able to do that right now. And so you don't need to keep a flat back. Just fold forward, maybe planting your forearms on the ground, maybe just placing your hands on the ground and pushing them or stretching them out in front of you. But just feel the sensation along the insides of both of your legs. Try and keep your legs straight, but don't lock them. No need to point or flex your toes. Just leaning forward and feeling your inner thighs. Just feel what this feels like to feel open in this way, but also to feel stretching your back. You try dropping your head to see what it feels like to curl your whole spine under. Just be here. And take 3 more breaths in this forward fold. And then after your third exhale, walk your hands slowly back up so you can come to an upright position, being careful and mindful to not experience pain. And if you experience something beyond about a 6 out of 10 of discomfort, just back off. Again, we're not here to push ourselves to our limits. And once we find ourselves back seated upright, we're just going to do this similar pose, but with only one leg out and one leg bent. So I'm going to start with bringing my right foot into my left thigh. And I'm actually going to shift my left foot out in front of me. And then we're just going to fold over that left leg. And so similar to what we just did, but now we're focusing on just the back of our leg and just rounding our spine over, dropping our head. Maybe you'd like to grab onto your foot on the inside or the outside and see how that feels in a stretch along your arm and your back. Just fold over that leg and notice the sensations in your body. What's stretching out as you fold yourself inward? And how can your breath allow you to go inward so that you can move things that don't serve you outward from your space, from your mind, from your heart? What can you let go of as you're stretching tonight? And what can you release physically, mentally, emotionally? And take 3 more breaths on this side. Again, what can you release as you stretch out tonight? What do you need to let go of? And if it's something that you need to let go of, but you're not ready to release it, what is it teaching you? What are you learning from this experience? And what's keeping you holding on? Maybe there's a perfectly good reason, but maybe you're just not ready yet to make a change. And that's okay. So after that third breath, go ahead and walk yourself back up, returning to an upright spine, looking up at the ceiling to stretch out the front of our neck, letting anything go so we can open our chest, open our hearts, and just clearly communicate what we need to say. So we're going to switch legs, bringing our right foot in, our left leg out in front of us. And on your next exhale, go ahead and just curve and curl over that leg. And as I mentioned earlier, but I'll mention again, our bodies are not symmetrical as much as they may look it. They are 2 completely different sides. And so if you were able to move differently on the opposite side and you're feeling some type of way about that, just know that you are unique in all of the ways. Each side is different. Each body is different in every moment. So just be with where your body is right here, right now, and just learn more about that. Maybe you notice you use one side of your body differently during the day, and then during yoga, that shows up. Or maybe you're just different on each side, and that's okay. There doesn't always have to be a reason, as much as we may want that. Just allow yourself to be here. And if you're noticing that emotions arise as you get into these stretches of the inner thighs or deeper stretches, just know that that is why I love Yin Yoga and why I love to offer it as a healing practice. So we stretch out our bodies, we can sometimes get to the things that we need to get to. And moving our bodies in a safe place, in a safe space, in a safe way can allow us to explore our emotions as well. I always encourage free write journaling after any yoga class or just in general in life, just to allow yourself to let it go on the page and just get it out and work through it, whether that be 1 page or 50 pages.
Just do what you need to do to be the best version of you. We'll stay here for about 1 more minute, just releasing. If you haven't tried dropping your neck, I encourage you to consider trying that. And back to that waterfall vision that we had at the very beginning of our time together. Just imagine that there's a waterfall caressing down from the sky above you and drawing everything that you don't need to be holding on to or that's holding you back and just washing it off of you. Maybe it's cascading off of the top of out of the top of your head as your head is tucked. Maybe it's going down the back of your entire leg that might be burning right now with sensation and out the bottom of your foot. Or maybe you just want to bathe in the waterfall. You do you. It's your imagination. So on your next inhale, plant your hands. Go ahead and rise back up. And this time, bring both of your feet in, soles touching, into a butterfly leg shape. And maybe just hold on to your feet and just bounce your knees up and down like butterfly legs. Just having some fun with this for a moment, moving, being a little silly. And we're just going to begin to kind of just, again, wake up our spine, maybe while bouncing your knees, maybe not. We're just going to do some circles, kind of leaning over to the left to one side, circling around to the front, going to the right side. Maybe you arch your spine or kind of draw it inward in that cat shape, coming back forward, looking up, dropping your head back, and doing this cat-cow type shape with your spine for just a few breaths to really feel all of it. And if you like the circles, keep doing those, just feeling our spine before we move into our next pose. And so our next pose together is just going to be a pigeon pose. This is a pose that we'll do on each side. So come back to hands and knees in that tabletop position. And before we do this, we'll just stretch out our legs in a different way. So picking up your right knee, pushing your right leg behind you, dropping that toe, and just bouncing forward and backwards, feeling the entire length of your leg. And then on your next inhale, lift that knee up and bring it to the right wrist. And seeing if you can kind of move that right leg at a 90-degree angle, working your ankle towards your left wrist, and then tucking that left toe under, scooting your left leg back a little bit in space. And we find ourselves in what some call sleeping swan, which is the beginning of the pigeon pose we'll do. And this is also a variation of pigeon. And so if your right hip is off of the ground in a way that doesn't feel like you can sustain that, place something like a blanket or a block underneath it. And your left hip, you might feel sensation along the front of it. That's okay. If you feel pain in your knee, add something underneath it if you need to. And then begin to come down onto your forearms.
Again, adjusting if you need something under your right hip or your left knee. And then maybe from forearms, you'd like to just kind of be in Sphinx-like arms and drop your neck down. And again, let things fall out of the top of your head, falling out of that you don't need. Maybe you want to come down further and plant your head on your mat. And we're actually going to be in this pose on this side for the next 5 minutes. And that might be a long time for you. And so adjust what you need so that you feel like you can be here for 5 minutes. Pigeon pose can be an incredibly sensational pose, and it can be an incredibly emotional pose if we need that type of release. So just do what you need, let go of what you don't, and just allow your breath and the props around you to just hold and support you while you do that. And if you'd like to tuck your left toes under because that feels better for your knee, feel free to do that. Sometimes that's what you need today. Sometimes that's just how your body works. There's no right or wrong to this type of practice. The practice is participating and taking time to nurture and care for yourself. And we're about halfway through this side. And so if you are noticing anything, I encourage you to just breathe into that. Allow your breath to comfort you, hold you, and guide you through. Just ride the wave. The waves arrive exactly when they need to, not before, not after. And each wave is as unique as a snowflake. Take 3 more breaths on this side. And then we'll slowly move back to a neutral rebound, and then we'll move to the other side with our left leg forward. And after that third exhale, just use the next inhale to rise yourself back up by crawling your hands back in towards your body. And we're just going to roll over that right hip
so that we kind of come to a seated position, wide-legged on our mat. Then we're just going to leave our left leg out, our right leg kind of curled in, and just create a moon shape, arching our spine over, lifting our right arm over our shoulder, and curving it across like a rainbow. And then just inhale back up, and your arms outstretched to the side. And we're just going to flip to the other side, bring our left leg in, back to those butterfly shapes. And then just switch and put your right leg out to the side and begin to roll onto that left hip, kind of into facing the opposite direction of your mat, curling all the way over into pigeon on this side. And at this point, you might not have your knee where you'd like it to be. So you might want to bring your left knee back into that tabletop type position with your right leg stretched behind you, bouncing that leg a little bit, stretching out that side. And then just lift up that left knee. No, bring your right knee back down to a tabletop. Lift up that left knee, move it towards your left wrist, and then move your right leg back in space, maybe putting something underneath your hip if you'd like. You have different needs on this side for your body. Remember, you are not the same on both sides, and that's what makes you beautiful. And so maybe on this side, you'd like to stay up on forearms or hands for a second, or you'd like to go ahead and come down to your forearms. Maybe from your forearms, you'd like to drop your head into kind of a sphinx-like position with your upper body. And adding any props where you need them. And using your breath as your prop. And just release into this side on this pose. And as you breathe, maybe you want to return that right foot, toes curled under for that sensation. If you've lost track of your breath, come back to that analogy of there being a balloon of your favorite color in your belly. As you inhale, fills up. As you exhale, it slowly deflates. Maybe you feel that in your belly and your lower back. Or maybe you imagine that balloon in a different part of your body. Inhaling, expanding, and exhaling, contracting and releasing.
Got about another minute here on this side. Just inhale, expanding, scraping out anything you don't need, and exhale, releasing and letting that go. So take 3 more deep breaths, inhaling and exhaling in that way. And then begin to crawl your hands back in towards your body. Coming back up after you've done those breaths. And then just rolling onto that left hip. Bringing that left foot in towards the right leg and curling back around into a similar position as we were in our wide-legged forward fold. And next we're going to move into fish pose once you're upright. And so what you'll do is first just get yourself back upright from that pigeon pose. And then begin to bring just both legs out in front of you, kind of bouncing them up and down a little bit. And for this pose, you'll need something behind you as a prop. You can have a pillow. I like to use yoga blocks. And we're going to need 2 yoga blocks if that's what you're using. You'll place one that will go at your shoulder blades, across the back of your chest, and your heart, on your back. And then the other will go further back from that to catch your head. And so there's multiple different ways that you can have your legs in this pose. But I like to have mine kind of in that butterfly shape again, just to continue that inner thigh stretch. And then just place your hands behind you, similar to how you did getting into saddle pose, and just walk yourself backwards. That first block or rolled up blanket should be right underneath your shoulder blades. And then the second one will go behind your head. You can have these on any level that you'd like. I have mine on the second level because that's what works for me. And you'll just notice that your chest and your heart are just wide open in this upright position, or up facing position now, completely open in a very opposite way than we just were in our pigeon pose. But maybe one of these is more vulnerable and challenging emotionally for you than the other. And so just notice if you feel differently emotionally in each of these poses. Notice what parts of your body you're holding, and see if as you exhale, you can release some of that and just hang and be here, supported, open, in this vulnerable position. And where in your life are you maybe resisting vulnerability? And how can being open to what this pose has for you help you become more open to that? Just let it go, be here. And anytime you need, remember you can return back to that, inhaling, filling the balloon, and exhaling, allowing that to release. And if you'd like to feel a different sensation in your upper body, you can try crossing your arms over your body like you're giving yourself a hug, and just allowing your hands to just fall on the sides of you. Seeing what that feels like across your upper back. Seeing what it feels like to have shifted from open to compression. Notice anything that you notice about that. And do that if you've decided to try it for 2 more breaths. And then just bring your arms back out We're going to move out of this pose slowly. So planting your elbows, lifting your head safely, curling your chin into your chest, and just slowly coming up to back to your hands and returning back to your spine being upright. And we're going to move into happy baby pose really briefly, and then a laying spinal twist before we come into our final pose of Shavasana. So go ahead and from this position of just sitting upright, go ahead and bring your feet out in front of you, planting your feet, your knees up towards the ceiling, and lie yourself just back on your back this time. And this time bring your knees into your chest, hug them in, maybe roll side to side. And then just grab the outside of your feet and imagine that you're drawing your knees down into your elbows. And if you'd like prefer to grab the inside of your feet, you can do that. Just imagine that your feet are planted on the ceiling while bent with your knees in towards your elbows. Maybe you rock side to side. Maybe you stay in stillness. Just be here for 3 minutes or 3 breaths. Whichever you need, actually. It's your practice. And then after you're complete, just bring your knees back in to your chest, hug them in. And then go ahead and inhale and place your arms above your head. You can either point them straight out or you can kind of hold opposite elbows with opposite hands above your head. And then just inhale and exhale to drop your knees over to the right. Trying to keep your chest pointed up towards the ceiling with your arms above your head. Dropping your knees to the right, but you're twisting at your core somewhat. This isn't necessarily a core workout. That's where you're twisting in that spinal twist. You can bring your knees in more into your chest, or you can kind of hold them away from your chest for different stretches along your hips and your lower back. Just allow them to be falling to the right side of your mat. And as you exhale, can you imagine that breath exhaling and just stretching out the entire left side of your body that's facing up towards the ceiling? So just brushing that tension down from your armpit, down your side, to your hip. And then sweeping it off down the side of your IT band to your knee, down your legs, and out the bottoms of your feet. Just brushing that stress off of you. Cascading waterfall, taking it away, carrying it onward, and cleansing you. And take 3 more deep breaths on this side, using whatever imagery works for you or not. This is your practice. And on your third inhale, just begin to inhale, slowly unwinding, bringing your knees back up over your chest. We're just going to move right into the other side. And so go ahead and dropping your knees over to the left side. Back might crack like mine, just getting that stretch. And again, doing the same thing on this side. Bring your knees closer into your chest or farther away for different sensation. And just rest here in this open twist that can cause quite a lot of sensation along the sides of our body, in our lower backs, and maybe even across our chest. If you're experiencing any restriction in your breathing in these twists, see if you can shift a little bit so that maybe there's something that needs to get released. Quick cough out. Just paying attention and being mindful of what your body needs and where your breath wants to go and what it's asking of you. Sometimes deep breathing can feel easier than other days. And just remember, on both of those days, you are breathing. And you do have that gift of breath, that gift of life force that runs through all of us, through our breath. And if you need to take a few and calm it and slow it and make it go deeper, just do that. When we aren't breathing deeply, it can impact us in a lot of different ways. And so take a deep breath when you can. And take 3 more right now. And after that third one, just bringing your knees back up, pointing them towards the ceiling in a neutral way. And from here, we'll just move into Shavasana. And so if you need any other poses before you've come into your final resting pose that will be in for about 5 minutes, do that. If you would like your final resting pose to be something other than just lying on your back, with your legs out in front of you and your arms at your side or maybe on your belly or your chest, do that. But these will be the final 5 minutes of our class. And after that, I hope that you find yourself doing something that you love. So get yourself settled. I'll watch the time and I'll let you know when it's been 5 minutes. And if you'd like to stay in that position, you're obviously more than welcome to, in your own home, in your own space. But if you'd like to move on to something else, I encourage you to consider grabbing a journal and just writing whatever comes to mind for the next 5 minutes. So think of this as a 10-minute meditation. 5 minutes here, lying, resting, releasing, and now relaxing. And 5 more minutes writing down whatever your mind needs on paper after that. And I want to leave us just with this quote tonight. The original author is, we aren't completely sure, but the sentiment is, you are what you repeatedly do. And I want you to consider, what is it that you repeatedly do? Are there things that you repeatedly do that make your life better, like taking time for yourself? Or are there things that you repeatedly do, like put yourself last, that make things a little bit harder than they have to be? And just notice the choices that you have throughout the next few days of what are things that you're spending a lot of your time on. What are you repeatedly doing with the time that you have? And if you want more of something, ask yourself what you can do repeatedly to get closer to that. And consider doing that twice this week and seeing how you feel. You can always listen to this recording again and go from there. And so we've got just a couple more minutes lying down. But if you're ready to move on to writing and you'd like to do that, I encourage you to, on your next inhale, roll on over to one side, bringing yourself up and moving into that space. But if you'd like to spend a couple more minutes resting, go ahead and do that. And so take about 3 more breaths. And then on that next breath, I encourage you to just move into something that you love doing with your time this evening. That's continuing to rest, continue to do that. But thank you for taking this time for yourself and nourishing your breath and your body. Hopefully, I'll see you next time.